Hello, good morning, and welcome to the latest Ironlights Major League Tournament. I am the main developer of Ironlights, E. McNeil, and I will be helping to commentate this tournament. These are our competitors, X9 and Asiento Ace. They are some of the fantastic up-and-coming duelists who will be fighting in the tournament today, fighting for the title of Major League Champion, the exclusive Champion's Helm, and the right to build a character that will be built into Ironlights. Now, it looks like in this very first match, we have a mirror match between two Reapers. X9 there in the Amethyst and Gold, taking the first melee attack, going in and getting a few solid hits, including a big headshot right at the start. The Reaper, of course, known for having a tricky offense to block, thanks to the shape of that scythe being to get your defense in place in time. Asiento Ace, though, just a quick charge up. When you do damage to the opponent, you heal some of the vulnerability incurred in the charge up, so that's usually a safe option. So what he needs to do is do enough damage to heal that vulnerability, and he successfully does so, showing that his strategic sense here is sound. It was a good idea to charge up there. However, the total amount of damage done didn't equal that of X9, meaning in this first back and forth melee encounter, which is often an important sort of setting of the pace for the match, X9 took a slight advantage here. However, X9 takes a bit of a ranged attack hit there from Asiento. Not something that he really needed to take. Luckily, he was almost at full energy anyway, and so is able to go back on the attack and again land some serious hits, taking Ace down to about half health, with X9 only down to maybe 80% or so. Ace, though, also with basically a full bar of energy, charges up to full, knowing that X9 can't punish him for that, and moves in for the attack of his own. This time landing significantly more hits, taking X9 almost down to half health as well, down to maybe 60% or so. X9 looks like in sort of the tail end of that attack, able to get more blocks than before. But nevertheless, Ace is not letting X9 run away with this. X9 still has a slight advantage in terms of health and maybe energy here. But yeah, Ace, I think, needs to do something to try to break that slight advantage that X9 is maintaining. And indeed, he chooses to charge up and attack first, despite the fact that X9 had a little bit more energy and even a full bar of energy. Goes in trying to deal damage before X9 can, and therefore taking the health lead. But really, the way to evaluate this is going to be based on what comes next from the retaliation by X9. And it looks like, yeah, X9 is throws that ranged attack out to land simultaneously with the melee attack, and then goes in hard, gets a few more big hits, and indeed it looks like they are successfully bringing Ace down a little bit below where X9 is, maintaining that slight edge of maybe 15% or so of the health bar, meaning that Ace is definitely on the back foot here. Can't afford another big attack from X9. And X9, knowing that, chooses to charge up and go in, trying to put this match away. Ace needs a nearly flawless defense. Basically, they can't take any big hits here. Takes a couple of minor ones, but does hold on. And X9 even has a little bit of vulnerability left. Ace, knowing that, is going to go in and try to get some extra damage from that, and lands the hit, doing a little bit more than otherwise would be done. Nevertheless, stuck in kind of a tricky position here. The overall strategic landscape of this match has not changed, with Ace still dangerously close to the end of his life, X9 maintaining a slight advantage here. But we have that situation where it's sort of an auction of like, who is more confident, who thinks that they can get in first, and finish it off. X9 in this case had less of a burden there to pull it off, and is able to go in and finish it. So congratulations there to X9 taking that first round. This being a best of 3 tournament, however, it is not the end for Ace, and now both players are going to get to choose a different class if they prefer, and Ace is able to ban a class from his opponent. So if Ace chooses, he can prevent X9 from taking the Reaper again, or can hope that X9 will take the Reaper and try to counterpick that somehow. Let's see how this goes in the second round here. Ace continuing to play on the Reaper, and X9, it looks, is sticking with the Reaper as well. meaning Ace must have picked a different class to ban, is implicitly happy to take a rematch here, which is an interesting call, but I think might actually be informed by the way that the last match played out. We saw that X9 took a lead at the very beginning with a really powerful first melee attack, and then just never let it go and was able to sort of ride that momentum all the way to the end, even though Ace was sort of keeping pace through the rest of it. And indeed, this time Ace doesn't take as much damage in that first attack. Um, it looks like we're having a little bit of connection issues. I'm thinking that, judging by the way the players are moving, possibly one of the characters or one of the players might have briefly dropped out there for a moment. But no, it looks like Ace is back and is going in on the attack here. It doesn't look like too much from that little network hiccup affected the game. The code is set up in such a way to try to prevent it from having sort of meaningful effects here. And so Ace able to do a little bit of damage there, not as much as X9 did. And X9 actually now with the energy advantage, goes in for a big charge up and attack here. So yeah, it's unclear if X9 is feeling more confident knowing how the last round went and knowing that they started off with another sort of advantage here, but they did a significant amount of charging up and left some vulnerabilities, standing there. Ace, though, not going in on the attack in time to capitalize on that. So X9's vulnerability does heal. But yeah, X9 in that melee attack was pretty aggressive, but didn't do a ton of damage to Ace. So Ace is going in for the next melee attack, sort of going out of turn a little bit. X9 almost having a full bar of energy, but still, Ace able to do some damage, getting a big headshot and a few other solid body shots there. Getting a slight advantage, but X9 going for the retaliation takes a hit from Ace's ranged attack on the way in. Not going to care too much about that because X9 is landing the hits that they need. They're taking again that advantage that they're clinging to through this match in the total health. So now with 0 energy for either player, X9 standing with, again, a fairly significant advantage, maybe 20% or so of that health bar, a little bit more. That's going to be difficult, and especially Ace looks like they took a bit of a hit from the ranged attack there, trying to throw ranged attacks back, land one on X9 to counteract that big energy advantage X9 has developed. But unfortunately, X9 is blocking all of them, leaving Ace with no choice but to go in for a melee attack with only half a bar of energy left. X9 blocking enough of it to keep the advantage in health, and now with a full bar of energy all to their own, goes in for the attack on melee and starts getting the hits that they need. It is sort of a disadvantage to be forced to go for that melee attack to try to get the hit that you really need, because there's a constant sort of burst of energy that's taken from you when you start a melee attack. The effect of that is that it's more efficient energy-wise to do longer melee attacks with bigger bars of energy. Doing short ones means you're throwing away a little bit of energy every time. But there are situations that you could put in or that your opponent puts you in where you don't have really a choice. And Ace there we saw doing sort of a quick melee attack of their own. X9 charging up almost to full energy, doing a cool spinning attack here to start this big melee. Takes a hit from Ace on the way in, but it has no trouble finishing it off there. Finishing with a little bit more health than even the previous round, which means X9 is able to take the second round and therefore win this match. Now, that does not mean, as I always like to point out, that Ace is out of the picture, because this is a double elimination tournament. Looks like I had a bit of a network hiccup myself. I think I lost the video stream, so Prox, if you could hook me up with that again. But in any case, it means that Ace is not out of the picture yet, and is potentially able to come back through the losers bracket and finish off whoever ends up in the finals coming from the upper bracket. So we might get to see some of those matches later on. Do not count them out yet. But X9 is the one who gets to move forward in the upper bracket while Ace is pushed down. All right. There are other matches going on at the same time. We actually have a fairly good number of people playing in this tournament. It looks like, I want to say 14. And so as a result of that, we'll be seeing some of these players in other matches. If we can hop in sort of while they're in progress or just whenever the next round is ready to go. So hold tight, and we'll try to get in matches as soon as we can. Though there is, of course, always going to be some level of delay while we're trying to sort of get this all worked out. All right. Lastly, as is tradition in these cases, there's the Twitch chat going on right now, and I will try to answer questions that I am able to, as I'm able to catch up to them at least. It's always tricky sort of splitting my attention while I'm doing this. But if anybody has questions about the game or the development or what's going on sort of in that realm, I'm always happy to treat this as a sort of developer ask me anything while we're in between matches. So yeah, anybody in the Twitch chat has questions, go ahead and post them up. Okay. We're having a bit of technical issues on the back end, but we're helping to, working to sort of fix that. Yeah, Prox, let me know just sort of how it ends up with the different video feeds. And if you do have to, pipe me the OBS stuff directly, that's fine. I'm sort of I'm trying to watch like Prox's feed directly as he sort of shares that to me and get it a few milliseconds before everybody else. And I've got the Twitch stream up on my computer, so I'm watching it sort of contemporaneously with everybody else as well. So we'll try to figure that out as well. But in the meantime, I'm going to answer some questions. Kai in the chat asks, how's Ironlights 2? That's probably an interesting line of query, and I'm happy to answer whatever people want to know about it. The problem right now is just that there's not a whole lot to answer with, because we're sort of at a point. I'm working on Ironlights 2, I'm calling it, with my friend Jack, who's an excellent programmer who I've known since high school and who lives in San Diego with me and has thankfully become available and agreed to work with me on a new game. And although I call it Ironlights 2, I always have to sort of caveat that it's more of a spin-off than a sequel. I'm not planning on making another Ironlights game or something that you could build just by extending Ironlights. It's not going to be a 1v1 fighting game. Instead, the idea is to make something that, I don't know, fixes all the issues that sort of are, limiting where Ironlights can go, and then also expanding it in ways that I find interesting. So, for instance, a lot of people have asked for stuff like 2v2 fights or co-ops type fights. And I'm interested in trying to make, the next Ironlights game more of like a four-player co-op, player versus environment type action RPG or roguelike type system. Something where you and your friends are doing Ironlights combat, but being able to wander freely around the level and fight enemies and, gain power and sort of progress through that kind of story. And there's a lot of different sort of inspirations that are informing that. But the problem, with talking about that is a lot of it is still just sort of fuzzy ideas and inspirations that are still kind of bouncing around, have yet to take a really concrete form, even on paper. There's still a lot of questions about sort of like how stuff fits together and what would actually work in a single game. So there's kind of two different like levels of development going on. One of them is like figuring out what we want to build, what's sort of, practical and what's we're designing in. And then we're also doing some prototypes in terms of technical stuff about how to render different types of environments and like different ways to set up, interesting technical questions, as well as prototyping, different traversal mechanics that weren't in Ironlights, and also trying to sort of rewrite the physics system that Ironlights used to create something a little more realistic. It's tricky, describing this because it can go in so many different places still. It's still so nebulous. It's, it's the start of a prototype. So Ironlights 2, hopefully very cool, really fun to work on right now, something that I'd like to, keep developing and start hopefully showing people some of these experiments soonish. but still not a lot really to show or report in specificity. We're still, for instance, like building placeholder swords, just trying to figure out a physics system that really feels good for that. And we're not at the point of like figuring out all the cool weapons and stuff that would go into it. Um, Archer is here in the chat. Asked, could we potentially have a pickaxe class or pickaxe as a sandbox weapon? Yeah, I think that's very possible. I would my plan for the next major update is to introduce a bunch of new sandbox weapons as well as sort of revise some of the sandbox weapons that are in there that were AI only and feel sort of particularly bad right now. A pickaxe is an example of one of those weapons that hypothetically should be fairly easy to set up, in that it's different physics and all of that, but otherwise kind of a single rigid static shape. So there's not a whole lot of crazy physics stuff that we need to do to figure out how to make it work. It reminds me of another common request is a kama, which is basically like a small like one-handed scythe, and I think that would be really fun to work with as well. So yeah, you could potentially have a pickaxe as a sandbox weapon coming up in that next major update, whenever that may come. I don't really have a timeline for that yet. Seal asks, what is your favorite campaign bot? That is also a really tough question, because there's so many of them. At this point, I believe there's, I want to say like at least over 90, possibly over 100 different bots, if you include like the, what do you call them? The exhibition matches as well. So it's tough to make a call there. And they were meant to serve different purposes as well. And a lot of them, I tend to like the style of the ones that I made, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're the best. So with all of that hedging, one of the ones that I've always been a fan of is in the Bronze League, there's a duelist early on called Dante, who is meant to be very easy and meant to be sort of one of the first opponents that you might fight. And what I like about it is that they're just sort of like bouncy and energetic, and I feel like communicates a good amount of personality and like brings energy to the fight. So yeah, I've always been a fan of that. So I will continue answering some of those questions once we are done with the next fight, or once we're waiting sort of in between fights. But it looks like it is time now to get going with the next fight. And that is going to be between Ranzi and Taco Maker. Taco Maker choosing the Greatsword, the Knight. And it looks like Ranzi doing the same. So we have an interesting, yet again, it's been all mirror matches. Oh, I'm sorry, I misspoke. I thought that I saw the Knight for Taco Maker. That is actually the Samurai's Katana. So this is not a mirror match. We do have all swords, but very different situation here. Now, this is the first match, the first tournament, I should say, since the latest patch has come out. And there were only, the biggest changes came to the new classes, Dragoon and Scourge, which remain banned for this current tournament. But there were some minor changes to the other classes as well. So both Greatsword and Katana have had some changes to them. It'll be interesting to see sort of if that has any major effects going forward here. So in the very first sort of back and forth, Ranzi taking a very slight lead, but both players sort of charging up their energy, and now Ranzi going in for the second attack, gets some big hits and backs out early before using up all of their energy. Taco Maker choosing to go in for retaliation and gets a few huge headshots. This Katana, of course, is known for being extremely fast and getting some really big hits potentially, a lot of damage possible per hit. But Ranzi, as I mentioned, saved up some energy and is now able to go in for another big attack. And does so again, sort of backs up and chooses to attack again. I'm not quite sure sort of the motivation here, but is repeating this sort of process of trying to go in for possibly getting the big hits right at the start, sort of surprising the enemy with that first attack. And yeah, it looks like sort of repeating that is able to get several hits on Taco Maker. Another potential plan there from Ranzi is trying to bait the opponent into charging up for a retaliation. But we didn't actually see that. Taco Maker not taking that bait or not choosing to charge up and incurring any vulnerability. Ranzi instead is the one who charges up here and goes in for yet more attacks. Takamaker trying to throw out some ranged attacks, but lacking the energy to do so. Um, Ramsey again, sort of waiting, finishing the attack early, and then backing up, going in for another charge, and with a big old 360 swing, able to land the final hit. That was an interesting match where it started quite even. Both Takamaker and Ramsey holding on to similar amounts of health in that very first back and forth, but Ramsey showing the pure damage throughput that can come out from that greatsword. Obviously it's slower, and each of the blades is not doing as much damage as a katana can do. But when you have both of them, especially if both of them can hit, then you're going to be doing a ton of damage, and it adds up very quickly. So Takamaker possibly choosing to ban the knight in this case, but Ramsey in any case switching to the katars on the ninja class. Takamaker sticking with the samurai. Ramsey's throwing out a few ranged attacks, but it's not making a huge difference there. Takamaker going in for the first melee attack we're seeing, and Ramsey, I think most people would say that the ninja has a bit of an advantage being able to block in two places at once. But Takamaker able to get a few significant hits in there. The ninja, of course, is infamously difficult to block, being able to attack from multiple directions at once. And indeed, Ramsey is landing sufficient hits here to really add up to bring down Takamaker's health significantly further than Ramsey's. So starting off with a big lead here. Takamaker, with knowing that both players are low on energy, chooses to do a bit of a charge up and then waits for Ramsey to charge up before going in himself, therefore able to get some big hits on vulnerability. Unfortunately, doesn't quite heal all of his own vulnerability, which means Ramsey, with a little bit of energy left of his own, is able to go in and take advantage of that, get some big hits himself. A little bit of what we saw in the previous fight, Ramsey going in for these sort of short melee attacks. As I mentioned in the previous match, that is a little bit less efficient in terms of energy usage, but is potentially keeping the opponent on the back foot and also getting that first attack with a little extra speed and surprise. So Ramsey, I think, is sort of making this a trademark of their style, able to build the damage up over time and grab a lead early and maintain it. So Takamaker waiting a little longer until Ramsey charges up a bit more, and then goes in for attack, but there's not a lot of energy there, so it's a fairly short attack. Ramsey again going in, taking revenge, backing up, attacking again, and able to land the hits. Actually, a lot of hits there. That's got to be really tough for Takamaker, being able to try to block those with the one weapon that's definitely slower. However, goes in for huge revenge hits, over 1,000 damage on Ramsey with that headshot. That is what every samurai player is dreaming of, something that can really turn the tide here. And Ramsey, trying to get revenge there, takes a bit of damage from stepping too far forward out of their movement boundary. At the end of that, Ramsey still has a lead, but this is way more even a fight than it was a moment ago, thanks to some just major hits from Takamaker. Takamaker back on the offensive, lands a good hit at the beginning, but then fails to follow up with any other hits, leaving Ramsey with the opportunity to go in and start doing what ninjas do, just a flurry of blows, none of which are doing a ton of damage on their own, but which add up. And then Ramsey, right at the end there, knowing that they had them down to one hit left, takes a moment to savor that victory, and then slashes both katars at once and is just able to finish up the fight. So congratulations there to Ramsey. And again, that is in 2 rounds, enough to win the match and move forward in the upper bracket. Takamaker previously won a match. This is actually a round 2 of the upper bracket. So Takamaker actually has won a previous match to get here, but at this point is now being pushed down to the lower bracket. They don't have as far to go as what we've seen before. It's not sort of the worst possible scenario, but still has a lot of opponents to fight through to be able to make it back to the finals. Ramsey will be moving on, and in round 3, we'll be facing whoever wins the fight between Axel and X9, who we saw earlier. So It'll be interesting to see who is able to fight through that, who gets forward, and who's going to step closer to getting the champion's helm. But in the meantime, we're going to have another break while we're waiting for sort of one of those new fights to get started. And I will be checking the chat again to see if there's any questions that I can answer about development or whatever you guys are interested in. So let's see. Brinst, I don't know how to pronounce that, I'm sorry, asks, what is your favorite custom weapon? Oh, tough call. It's, really tempting to answer the pistol or the fish, because those were just the joke, April Fool's weapons that were added because they were so frequently requested. But in terms of actual favorite custom weapon, I actually might say the scimitar, which is maybe a weird choice because it's not one that really comes up a whole lot as some like sort of a fan favorite. But the scimitar is I think I just love the feeling of kind of sword classes. And the scimitar is just different enough that it doesn't feel like a copy of the longsword or the rapier to me, but still sort of supports the type of fighting that I think is really fun. And also, it doesn't have any drag when you are letting go of it, which means that you can spin it around. Anything that you spin around in your hand is the coolest. So yeah, probably favorite custom weapon would be scimitar. Mr. Unicorn Games asks, what would you say is the best class? Well, I always say that my favorite class is the duelist, just because I like that sort of fencing style. I'm not sure what to call it, but the sword, quick sword play that comes from rapier fights, especially mirror matches. But you didn't ask for my favorite class, but you asked for the best class. And that is a trickier question. I guess, it's always changing, and the point is that there is no single best class. If I was to announce that I thought there was a best class, then I'm basically saying that I thought that I should have made some other changes that I didn't make. So, yeah, I guess it's kind of an impossible question. I don't know if I can say there's a best class. The duelist, it does stick out to me as a class that's always been popular in the high ranks for being so versatile. It's not a class that has an obvious weakness or that can't fight against anybody. So, I might pick that, but it actually is less popular and less effective at the lower skill levels, and it's really only sort of getting parity with all the other classes once you get to really high skill levels. So again, yeah, I can't really say there's a best. All right, Polly asks, is Berserker ever going to get damage unsplit? I'm assuming what you mean by that is like the damage being like favoring the collision volume at the head of the hammer as opposed to the shaft of the hammer, the handle. I don't think so. It might get slightly rebalanced such that it's a little more even than it is now. But I actually like the effect that we had from switching things up so that the hammer head is really where it's at. And I think that's a little more true to sort of the vibe that we were going for with the Berserker class. Kai asks, can we meet Jack? Is Jack a gamer? Jack is a gamer. We've actually played together since forever. We had, he was one of the people who were at the LAN parties that I would go to in high school. And he actually probably plays games more than I do because he's, he plays a wide variety of games, but I know that he is like a regular Final Fantasy 15 player, 14 or 15, I don't remember. And he's actually introduced me to a bunch of other games, including some that I'm playing now. So yeah, he I don't know, he might be more of a gamer than I am. And can you meet him? Yes, but not right now. What I'm thinking is that Jack will sort of make his appearance either whenever he feels like it or when we start talking more intentionally about what's going on with Ironlights 2. I don't know, exactly when that will be, but I figure Jack can, I don't want to sort of shove him in front of the people, especially when we don't really know sort of what to say about Ironlights 2, or it's still so nebulous. I worry about getting sort of a surge of questions and stuff directed to him, that would be a burden. But he's cool, and you'll definitely see him eventually, as the development progresses. let's see, any other questions? People are saying that sounds awesome. I assume they're talking about Ironlights 2. Somebody asked, is there going to be a game mode like Team Deathmatch 2v2? Yeah, so that, well, a lot of the stuff that I say about Ironlights 2 could still change. Honestly, at this point, it could end up becoming a totally different game than anything I'm talking about. But the plan is to make it, kind of focused on like the teams of 4 co-op gameplay, but to support player versus player in every form. So, allowing 1v1 matches like in Ironlights, but also 2v2 or, 4-player free-for-all, that kind of thing. I'd like to support all of that because that's stuff that it's a lot harder to set up in Ironlights for various reasons. And when I'm starting on a sequel, I'd like to sort of make it work. All right, it looks like we have a new match connected, and we're going to be jumping into that right now. So I will be back to answer more questions later, but for now, it looks like we have Sherlock versus Aaron. They're showing up here as Mr. Sherlock and Spicy Aaron. They're full in-game usernames, but these are folks that we have seen on the Discord as well. And it looks like we've got Sherlock using the Samurai and Aaron on the Reaper, the Katana and Scythe, respectively. Seems like popular classes, ones that we've seen so far in the upper bracket here. But let's see how these play up against each other. In some ways, these oh goodness, starting right off the bat, Sherlock goes in for a quick attack and lands some big hits right away. Able to do some good damage there to Aaron, bringing down almost maybe 30% of that health bar. Aaron going in for the revenge attack. And again, with that scythe, always tricky to block, able to start getting hits right away, but not quite matching the pace set by Sherlock in that really quick first assault. Sherlock finishing with a little bit of a lead and choosing to charge up, in fact, while Aaron and Sherlock both are left with very little energy. So not taking the time, though, sort of to wait for that to build up more. Instead, trying to get the attack right off the bat and not able to land a many hits there. So now Aaron able to go for the counterattack, taking the lead by being able to chew through the vulnerability that Sherlock left. And Sherlock, again, trying to keep up this sort of aggressive stance, charges up again, not quite as much, able to sort of heal that amount of vulnerability, but goes in for another attack. And it looks like, I don't know what's changed, but Aaron is now sort of not letting the big hits through, only takes a small hit to the lower body for about 300 damage. Sherlock goes in for a big hit on Aaron's vulnerability, but Aaron's still keeping a lead in terms of health and still has some energy left for this melee attack we're seeing right now. Gets a nice headshot and a few others. Able to take a convincing lead now, sort of switching things around, sitting comfortably above Sherlock in terms of the health points here. Really interesting sort of back and forth that we're seeing here. Oh, it looks like we're having some unfortunate lag issues. I'm not sure what's causing that. It might be having to do with Proximo. Okay, it looks like it's from what I'm seeing on the screen, it looks like it's smoothing out, at least on what I'm seeing on Twitch. So hopefully we'll be able to maintain that. But in any case, Aaron still with the significant lead. Sherlock did another melee attack there, but wasn't able to do a ton of damage, and that leaves Aaron with the chance to go in here and try to get a bunch of big hits. Steps a little too far forward, takes some extra damage, but getting several big hits and able to finish it off with a series of good body shots there. Congrats to Aaron for sort of turning it around really quickly there and running away with round one. An interesting come from behind there. I really thought Sherlock had it in the bag after that first assault. That first melee attack really did an enormous amount of damage, just one hit after the other with the katana. But Aaron showing that we can't count him out and basically learned how to defend against it. Players adapting to each other in the middle of the match is always the most interesting part to watch, in my opinion. All right, after the bans and repicks, it looks like both players choosing to switch to the Knight. An interesting choice here. throwing some ranged attacks at each other, and then Sherlock going in for the first melee attack, able to land a couple of hits, but double hits in this case, able to actually slip around the defense entirely and land a good amount of damage, but it doesn't add up to a ton. And now Aaron going on the offensive, able to land a few more, already taking a bit of a health lead. This is going to be very tricky. Aaron is in part known as one of the players who is at the top of the leaderboards in terms of just the raw skill points being tracked by the game. That is not the be-all, end-all. Really, you should be watching the tournaments and sort of direct fights if you're trying to figure out who is the top player. But it's definitely something to indicate that you've got to watch out for him. Sherlock able to get a couple more hits, a one-shot and then a double hit on the body in that last melee attack. But now Aaron, again, going on the offensive, able to land enough double hits of his own to bring Sherlock down below half health. I think Sherlock needs to sort of find a way to change this up, and that's always difficult to do. There's sort of different strategies that one could try to take. Oh, so does a really nice sort of ranged attack, trying to land, along with the melee attack there, and is able to get more meaningful hits. Charges up a little bit, though, and Sherlock taking some damage in both the vulnerability as well as just the sequence of hits that we're seeing again and again from Aaron. Continuing to steadily chew through Sherlock's remaining health. Sherlock going in for a fairly short melee attack here. They're able to do an interesting little spinning move there to get hits on both the shoulders of Aaron. There is an anti-windmill mechanic that was added in the most recent patch, but it seems like neither of these players are relying on very repetitive movements, despite some interesting spins here. And indeed, Aaron able to go in and keeping that sword moving stunningly fast, able to land the hits necessary to finish off the opponent and take the match. So congratulations then to Aaron. Moving on now to the semifinals already. Interesting set of matches there. Sherlock at this point had to fight through two previous opponents in the upper bracket. So everybody that we're seeing now is one of the players who's really proven themselves, who's already beaten somebody who's beaten somebody else to get here. And I think that's why we're seeing sort of only the the players who have really proven themselves at this point. The semifinals, whoever wins that one, Aaron versus whoever is able to fight up to there, is going to make it to the very finals. But whoever, what I like about the double elimination tournaments is lots of people get kicked down to the lower bracket. Everybody who fights has a chance to sort of fight back through the lower bracket all the way up to the top, and they have to fight so many matches to get there. And after all of those rounds, it really narrows it down to a really strong second place. So even if Aaron is able to make it to the finals, it's going to be fun just knowing that whoever faces him is somebody who has already won potentially 6 or 7 matches before that. Maybe I'm just not counting right, but point being, there's a lot of good competition left in this tournament. All right, I'm going to switch back though to checking the stream chat for any questions that we have. Prox is checking out some technical difficulties right now. But if anybody has anything they want to ask, I am, for those who missed the introduction at the beginning, I'm E. McNeil, the main developer of Ironlights. So if you have any questions about what's going on with Ironlights, or historical questions about how Ironlights came to be, or questions about Ironlights 2 in the future, feel free to ask. Let's see. People are asking for pictures of cats. I do have cats, but I can't let them in the office. Sorry, they have a tendency to just take over. Seal asks, which class is your least favorite? It's a pretty negative question, but I'm curious. I say I love all my children equally. And again, it's sort of like if there's a class that everyone knows is, completely the worst class, then it's sort of my job to try to balance it to make it better. The one thing that I will say though is there's sometimes concerns about classes where you can balance them in terms of like their win rate and their pick rate, where statistically they're equal to the others. But if the way that those classes win is a way that is no fun for other people to fight against, then I tend to err on the side of keeping it weaker. I'd rather have classes that are, when you fight them, you enjoy the fight, even if you're defending against them. Um, and so I think the kind of poster child for that dilemma is the ninja with the dual katars. We were able to see a ninja win in this very tournament, proving that they're not out of the fight. And there's been several players who've shown sort of ways that the ninja could be used to great effect. Multiple times, everyone's thought that the ninja has been nerfed to oblivion, and then they turn out to just win an entire tournament and just dominating other classes. So, basically, if you look at the stats right now, the ninja is slightly more than average popular for lower skill levels for new players, but becomes one of the weaker and less chosen classes as you go up in sort of the skill levels. And part of that is because a lot of people have the experience that if they're fighting a ninja who's too powerful, if it's tuned to be a little more damaging than it is right now, then you're just left with sort of a feeling of helplessness, or like, how am I supposed to have my one sword in two places at once? And it's not as fun in total for the all players of the game. So yeah, the ninja has been, and I guess the scourge as well now has been one of the more troublesome classes. All right, we're hopping into a match in progress. I believe this is the first round. It looks like we have Ace fighting against Prodry. And speak of the devil, here is the ninja being used from Ace against the Reaper, who we've seen multiple times now on Prod. Ace is a little bit behind now and just finished a major melee attack, hoping to sort of balance it out, but sadly has not quite managed to do so, meaning that we have a fairly even match at this point, but Prodry with a little bit of a health and energy advantage. The last time that we saw the ninja used, we were not seeing the ranged attack used for sort of the charge up hits. And Ace was showing that he's willing to try to charge up and get the extra damage and speed that comes with that. The projectiles get a lot faster once you sort of charge them up. But having a lot of trouble with the Katars being able to block the big scythe attacks coming from all directions. And now going in again on the attack, sort of doing a up and down style to get the melee attacks coming out quicker, able to land a significant number of hits and almost evening out the health bars there, but not quite able to. And so as a result, we end up with Ace in a similar position to before, pretty even, but still slightly behind Prodry. And if Prodry can continue doing the amount of damage that we saw in previous attacks, and yeah, it looks like in this attack, able to get a big headshot and several other hits, really chipping away big sections of Ace's armor there. Ace still sitting on a good amount of energy though, so they're going to be able to do a nice big melee attack. But the ninja, it's not clear if they're going to be able to do the total amount of damage necessary, even with lots of little hits. It's death by a 1,000 cuts with the ninja, but when you multiply that damage by number of hits, it's got to add up. And it looks like Prodry maintaining that slight lead that they had from before. So we're seeing this sort of dynamic that we've seen in other matches where one player takes a lead and then just refuses to let it go. Ace, in this case, surprises the opponent, doing a quick charge up and attack, able to land 2 big headshots for 400 damage, but now Prodry choosing to do the same, charging up and going in for a big melee attack, hoping to put Ace out of commission, not quite able to do so, and leaving a little bit of vulnerability, charging up again now. So Prodry choosing to take these sort of shorter attacks, does a little bit of damage, but takes a little bit of damage as well from stepping outside of that boundary. And that means that Ace is going to be able to do double damage with each of these hits. The question is whether they're going to be able to actually finish it off. And no, both players now down to just the slightest health. And Prodry able to go in and take that last hit, barely finishing off. Look at that tiny, tiny corner of health left, almost nothing left. What an incredible close match there. Um, did both players, they quit out after that, which I'm guessing means that that was the final match of that back and forth of that fight. Um, so yeah, that was actually our lower bracket round two between Prodry and Ace, meaning Prodry gets to move forward to losers round three, fighting against Psych. And Ace, sadly, is knocked out of the tournament. We saw Ace fighting well in that first round versus X9, and just barely missing out on this lower bracket opportunity. But it was a great match, I have to say, and Prodry will be moving forward. Trox making an announcement. Thank you for posting that. That we do have a training halls set up in the Discord, so you are able to find a mentor to help sort of train you and show you what it takes to fight, as well as some of the competitors that we have today. So if anybody's watching this and interested in joining up, please check that out. All right, I'm going to check for more questions in the stream chat while we're waiting for the next match to start. Blackman asks, will the Ironlights 2 have more than one map or place? The answer is definitely yes. Ironlights 2, in many ways, is designed to sort of, fix the issues with Ironlights 1 or things that people were hoping for, that people wanted out of it. And part of that is more variety in terms of environments. That's something, honestly, that I've just wanted personally, in part from, dealing with lockdowns and all of that over the past year. I developed a real appetite to sort of be able to move around freely and see a lot of different interesting things. So part of Ironlights 2 is, because it's not meant to be like a stadium 1v1 fighting game, we're trying to figure out sort of what the setup will be, but the plan is something that allows you to move around more freely and that has a much greater variety of environments. So, I don't know sort of what that is going to turn into. There's still a lot of flexibility and stuff that we're trying to figure out on the design side. That's actually trying to make some decisions on that is one of my big tasks for this week, working on Ironlights 2. But yeah, it is definitely going to be more than one place and hopefully a lot more. Ty mentions the best sandbox class is the short sword, main hand, blaster, offhand. Yeah, the short sword has been a surprising hit, in my opinion. I built it in part because originally it was only created for Varinus, the exhibition match opponent with the tower shield, who's designed to sort of be like a Roman legionary kind of, type of theme. And it was just sort of tuned to be suitable for that situation. But people have had a lot of fun with it, and a lot of popular sharing bots have been created using the short sword. The blaster as well was sort of originally just meant to be a ranged attack thing, and then turned into sort of a fist fighting weapon. But enough about that. We are moving straight into the next match, and this is actually the one that I mentioned a moment ago between Prodry and Psych. Could be Psych. So Psych actually choosing to start off with the duelist, the first time that we have seen that character, that class, in this tournament. Prodry with the katana, the samurai class. The duelist is known for having a slight advantage over samurais. And it'll be interesting to see if that plays out here. But Prodry, we cannot take him for granted because he starts off getting huge hits. That katana moves very fast and can do a ton of damage. So we're seeing, several big headshots and other hits, taking out, I want to say, like over 30% maybe of Psych's health bar there. But Psych, of course, started with some energy too and is going in for the attack of his own. The duelist, very nimble with that rapier, able to definitely get some good hits in, sneaking around the opponent's defenses, but it doesn't add up to a ton. In the end, it looks like Prodry did a lot more damage, and is indeed choosing to charge up, leave some vulnerability on his health, trying to get the hits here. And now it looks like Psych is not letting as many hits through. Ooh, I may have spoken too soon, because a couple of big hits right there at the end. But now Psyche left with not a ton of energy, and Prodrai was able to heal up a lot of that vulnerability. Psyche now chooses to charge up on his own so that he can go in and take advantage of the vulnerability he saw, gets a good 500 damage headshot, and doesn't leave any vulnerability left on himself. But I don't think Prodrai is showing much hesitation now, choosing to charge up, get a bunch of energy, and try to continue this very aggressive style. Um, Getting a lot of hits, many of them to the lower body, so they're doing less than 300 damage, not as much as the katana is truly capable of, but it doesn't quite matter. That's still, a lot of damage. That's about as much as the duelist is getting in most shots. As a result, Prodrai able to bring Psyche's health down to that last 10 or 20%. Psyche's still choosing to charge up a little, try to get some extra energy to get revenge, and lands a big 760 damage headshot there. Fantastic attack there, but has definitely been sort of backed into a corner. Prodrai has not left himself with really any non-vulnerable health left, but only needs to get a couple of big hits, and there they are. Two big headshots for over 400 damage each was enough to finish that match off. Prodrai playing very dangerously there, leaving himself with so much vulnerability that almost all the hits against him are going to be double damage. But backed Psyche into a corner where Psyche really didn't have the health necessary to do any charging up of his own, and just overall throughout the fight doing huge amounts of raw damage. So probably with that samurai banned from Psyche, we're seeing Psyche with the duelist again facing off against Prodrai on the Reaper. Again, seeing that Reaper, a very popular pick, it seems, for the competitors in this tournament. Psyche this time choosing to start off with the first attack. Gets a couple of hits, doing a good 250-ish damage with each one, but it doesn't add up to a ton. And so I think there's a question here of whether Prodrai is able to really lay down the damage with that scythe. As I've said again and again, it's legendary for being difficult to block. The shape of that scythe means that you have to really be thinking ahead of it more so than really any other weapon. But the duelist is pretty versatile on defense, being able to be in two places at once with the buckler and rapier, and possibly with a more effective ranged attack for the harassment that's necessary in these matches. Indeed, Prodrai throws out a ranged attack there, and Psyche easily blocks it. Prodrai with about half a bar of energy, and Psyche with almost a full bar, yet it's Prodrai who chose to attack first here, and is rewarded being able to land several hits in a row, including a couple of big headshots. Psyche is not doing a bad job here on defense, is able to block a lot of them, but is still taking a good amount of damage, needs to land the hits now that they're using the energy on offense. And the speed of these hits matters a lot. Being able to just put out a lot of attacks is pretty effective here, but it looked like Prodrai was able to block those surprisingly effectively, sometimes using the scythe blade itself and sometimes using those shield bars. It looks like Psyche is having some issues, maybe had to put down the headset or something like that for a second, but no, is back. Prodrai showing a lot of sportsmanship there, not attacking or anything during that moment, that interruption, but both players sitting with full energy at the end of that little break. And so Prodrai, the first to go on the attack and spend that on getting some big damage. Able to get these kind of sneaky hits from the side, Psyche having a difficult time blocking all of them. I talk about the Reaper kind of being harder to block with more of an offensively oriented weapon, but it is true that that scythe has two different ways to block. It has the shield bars in the center that don't have to be reloaded, as well as the blade up top. So Prodrai is able to do fairly effective defense, more so than I would expect. At the end of that, Psyche had his most effective attack we've seen of this round so far, and has almost evened things out, but Prodrai maintaining a slight advantage at the end of it. Psyche choosing to charge up slightly and go in for another attack, hoping to get enough hits to heal the vulnerability, but in that, a lot of that attack is not able to land the hits necessary. Finally gets a couple towards the end, and then actually bringing it back around again and again, able to land big hits on Prodrai. It looks like Prodrai sort of had his number at the start of that attack, but then Could Be Psych changed up the rhythm, and Prodrai was unable to sort of defend against that from that point forward. And then we see the opposite sort of happening when Prodrai attacks. Could Be Psych takes a couple of hits, but then is able to block and start defending very effectively and avoid taking damage through the rest of that. Could Be Psych chooses to charge up quite a lot and might again be hoping to do a lot of damage all at once and to try to heal that. But that is quite a risk. And indeed, Prodrai blocking with the shield bars a lot, able to block a lot of that damage and leave Psych with a significant amount of vulnerability remaining. But Prodrai still not choosing to capitalize on that until really towards the very end. Able to do so, get a little bit of extra damage, bringing one of those body shots up to 475, but it doesn't turn out to be a lot of vulnerability that Psych is left with. Prodrai charges up again, and so does Psych. Psych now going on the attack, trying to get some big hits on the vulnerability, only really gets 2 there, leaving not a ton of damage done. Prodrai still ahead though, and goes forward with the attack, charging up, and oh my gosh, there was a really desperate and effective defense, but with the very last strike left, Prodrai able to sneak through the defenses and land the finishing blow on Psych. That means that's round 2, and the match goes to Prodrai. So what a fight. That was a lot of back and forth, a more defensively oriented match, I would say, despite both players consistently able to get hits in. And it really kind of went back and forth. I don't think that Psych ever had like a definitive advantage, but there was definitely points where they evened it up and looked like had the momentum. And it was really only with that really strong fight towards the end that Prodrai was able to take it back and put the match in their corner to finish it off. So congratulations to Prodrai. Well fought to Psych. And we hope that we'll see you in future tournaments as well. But Prodrai will be moving on to the lower bracket round 4. And we will see if they're able to make it all the way up to the finals. Okay, I'm going to take a long breath and then check again in the stream chat to see if there's any other questions that I can answer. Sir Shield asks, the stab ranged with the knight was intended, ? I think what you, I'm not sure, there's always terminology that I'm sort of behind on, but I'm guessing that stab range is referring to the sort of knight ranged attacks where they kind of turn in like a little circle and are able to get, instead of like a long arc, they're able to shoot several shots sort of straight in front. That is not intended, but it's definitely like in that sort of gray zone where it's not considered like an exploit. It's not a bug. It's just finding out, that people have sort of figured out ways to get the mechanics to, work in their favor in ways that were not my, original intention. But that's, considered different from like exploiting a bug or, doing something that was like totally, game breaking. So I don't consider the stab range to be cheating, but it is something that I reserve the right to try to patch out in the future, especially if I can figure out a good way to do that doesn't block other, sort of clearly intended types of attacks. It turns out that turning that, that type of intention of like this type of arc, but not that type, into math is quite tricky sometimes. Some other comments talking about what the top classes are. Reaper and Samurai, somebody says. Seal says best class Monk, obviously. I believe that was sarcasm. But yeah, we have seen a lot of Reaper and Samurai and Knight in these tournaments so far, in the matches that we've seen so far. So that's one of those things that I sort of take into account when I'm looking at trying to balance stuff. When I do balance adjustments in patches, I'm always trying to balance, I'm balancing the classes, but I'm also trying to balance them for across different skill levels. So keep in mind that, there's cases where I have to consider what it's going to mean for the new players who are, new to the game and don't want to get utterly crushed by, one class just because it's, not in favor by, from the very top players. However, what I'm getting around to saying is that these tournaments and seeing what classes are picked and how they're used in these tournaments is a big piece of data informing how classes are balanced for the top end. It is important to me to try to make sure that there's not a dominant class, and I think that we've gotten to that point where um, there's not like one class that everybody knows is the dominant one that has to be banned. Um, and there's actually even some classes that come out and sort of surprise me, where we've seen, as I mentioned earlier, the ninja came out and won one of the rounds here. It was nice seeing the duelist in the previous matches as well. I don't feel like there's a class that truly gets counted out. It'll also be interesting to see how those words stand up to our next week's tournament, our Grim Invitational tournament, which is the Invitational, which allows all competitors, including those who have won previous Major League Championships. Once you've won a Major League Championship, you can't play in future majors, but you do get to come to these invitationals. So this one, in honor of our moderator Grim, who sadly had to quit the Discord channel recently, um, is going to feature a lot of the competitors who we've seen in previous tournaments and who have had a lot of success. And I'm curious to see what classes they'll be picking as well. All right. Looking for other questions. Brusint, Brew isn't? I don't know how to pronounce it. I'm so sorry. He asks, are there any custom combos you would call unbalanced, aside from the guns, of course? This question is referring to the sandbox weapons, where you're allowed to pick whatever combination of weapons you like. And, the mention of the guns, of course, is that the pistols in the game are joke weapons that are clearly unbalanced and, not even meant to be. But yeah, other combos that are unbalanced, there's some that are sort of obvious picks, like the glaive is a one-handed weapon, but it's quite powerful. The glaive and the triglaive that are used by the dragoon, you can hold those in two hands, and at that point, I think it's just a little silly. It's not never meant to be played that way. That one of those one-handed weapons is meant to be powerful enough, basically. Um, there's definitely other combos that basically anytime that you can put two weapons, a weapon in each hand, um, I would say that that tends to make it a lot harder to balance because the other player has to somehow be able to block both of those. So dual scimitars, dual longswords, dual anything really starts to become unbalanced. And I would say that the exceptions are the ones where that are more interesting, where like dual blasters or dual sticks in sandbox are surprisingly balanced, despite not really being made for that or being tuned for that. So yeah, I'd say most combos in the custom mode are unbalanced one way or another. Um, Bats Vermin asks, how is the tourney going? I would say it's going pretty well. We've seen a lot of good fights so far, and I'm looking forward to seeing more as the rounds progress. Um, okay, Prox tells me that there's been a couple of slow matches. So we will be hopping into a match soon, but there's been one or two matches that have been a little behind schedule and have sort of because we have to like wait for the results of a match before we can advance one of those players forward to the next one. That means that there's been a bit of a bottleneck, and we have to sort of go through those matches one by one to try to catch everything up. Okay. Um, VR Master asks, will there be an Ironlights 2? Yes. There was some discussion about this earlier in the stream. So, once we're done with this, if maybe you can go back and check out the video earlier in the tournament and some of the breaks in between. I think the first break I talked a little bit about Ironlights 2, but yeah, the plan is Ironlights 2, but um, it's not going to be the same game as Ironlights 1. It might not even be called Ironlights 2. Um, I think that there will be a clear sort of what do you call it? Lineage, between them. The sort of obvious ancestry of Ironlights 1 will come through. But the plan is not to make a 1v1 fighting game, but instead something more like a four-player multiplayer action RPG or roguelike type game um, with cool melee combat. Um, the Ultimate God 123 says, I mean, this game is perfect. I don't think it needs one. Thank you. That's so kind. I don't think that Ironlights is perfect. I am very proud of it. And talking about its limitations, the things that I hope to change in the next game is no way meant to sort of uh, dish dirt on Ironlights 1. But yeah, there definitely are limitations and flaws that I'm hoping to be able to address and improve in Ironlights 2. And it's going to be a long time before that comes out. I think there was a question earlier that I missed asking how long it would take to make the next Ironlights game. I'm really afraid to make any kind of even estimate about that because one of the things we're still trying to figure out is what the total scope of it would be. My hope would be that we'd be able to like show off a beta, um, within like a year or something like that. Oh, it looks like we're hopping into a new match, so I'm going to start focusing on that, and I'll save the questions for later. We have X9 versus Ranzi. This is the upper bracket round 3, and we have the Knight on Ranzi, but X9 showing off the Crusader with the flail, not a class that we've seen in the tournament so far. And so I'm actually very pleased to see that. Again, it's nice to see all of the different classes come out. And X9, with almost full bar of energy, going on the attack, has kept the health bars fairly even so far. Looks like pretty significant successful defense, a lot of good blocking from Ranzi. And that's actually always been a kind of classic matchup with the tricky defense from the Knight versus the Crusader. The Knight has this big, slow, heavy sword. The Crusader's flail can move very fast and unpredictably. So yeah, it's very tricky to block. I think Ranzi did a fantastic job blocking there, but nevertheless is finishing that back and forth with a little bit less health. And now with both players with almost full bars of energy, X9 going on the attack again and able to land a couple of big hits, including a nice headshot there. The Crusader was slightly buffed in the previous patch, and in a way that was intended to sort of address the Crusader falling behind among top level players. So this might be sort of a chance for X9 to prove the value of the Crusader, show off sort of like what it can do against other top level players. The other advantage that Crusader has is that nice big shield. In the latest patch, the speed of the shield, the maximum linear speed of it, was increased a little bit. Oh, Ranzi saying hello to the camera, or sorry, X9 saying hello to the camera there. But it can take a lot of damage when blocking that greatsword. So yeah, often one of the that's that sort of stab attack that they were talking about. That's very interesting. I don't know if I've seen it done like that before. Yeah, I think that's similarly like, as I said, not cheating, but not as intended. So possibly something that I'll be patching out. We'll see. X9 back on the attack. Ranzi getting a lot of good dodges in, sort of using the ability to move forward and back to try to prevent X9 from getting too many hits. Now, on the offensive again, X9 has been able to regenerate that shield almost to full. It regenerates slowly over time, but also it's important to note that blocking with the flail against the sword directly regenerates a little bit of the shield as well. And that's kind of a special mechanic that was intentionally put in to help balance things for these top-level matches. X9 using it to great effect, keeping that shield up, able to prevent Ranzi from getting too much damage here. Ranzi with a couple of nice big hits, doing damage that, counts here, and even able to get a nice, like 600 damage from the ranged attack on, while on the charge in. But X9 has kept a significant lead throughout this match and significantly stayed ahead, able to keep that all the way through and finish off that last round with the hits that he needed to put it away. So congratulations. Looks like X9 will be moving forward in the tournament again. Yeah, it looks like that was round three that we were watching there, or possibly round two. But in any case, X9 moving forward to face Aaron in the semifinals next, whereas Ramsey will be heading down to the lower bracket round four, actually set up to face Prod Rye, who we recently saw defeat Psych. So interesting developments in the bracket. Um, I will be very curious to see Aaron versus X9 because we've gotten to see both of those players so far fighting a couple matches, and I think it's the more that you see players fighting and winning, the more interesting it is to see what happens when they finally face each other. All right, I'm checking for more questions in the stream chat. Um, Batman asks, "Oh God, will we have legs and arms?" Um, I'm assuming this question is in relation to Ironlights 2. No, I still don't want legs and arms in the game. I think that using IK is always really kind of ugly, and games it's impossible to tell sort of where to put your elbow when you're playing that, and so I guess there's some possibility of trying to put it in some way where like you can see the other person's arm but not your own or something like that. But I kind of like the Ironlights characters as like floating suits of armor and hands. Um, I feel like it's enough to sort of communicate the presence of a character, and it does a pretty good job considering that we're only tracking sort of three real points to guide all that animation. Um, let's see. Seal asks, "Can E enter a majors at some point?" I probably not, especially if I'm going to be trying to cast it to commentate on it as like this. Um, I also would be crushed in the first two matches. There's no question. I have been eclipsed in skill by my players since long ago. I've made peace with that fact, and it's okay with me. Um, the proof of this came in the boss battle weekend that we held a few weeks ago. And the idea there was that anybody who was interested could challenge our previous champions or myself to a duel, and we would agree to accept. And as a result, I was fighting people in different duels, best of threes, throughout the weekend, and I won a few of them against very new players, but almost anybody who'd sort of been around for a while, and probably the caliber of player who's participating in the finals, um, was able to wipe the floor with me. And that's good. I think that that's a good sign that there's players who are into the game enough that their skill level eclipses mine. And if that wasn't the case, that would be actually really concerning because it would basically mean that there's just like a trick to the game, and if you're the developer, you know what it is. The fact that I get crushed by top players in this game means that the skill is like more of a real thing that I can't just control. So yeah, I think it is a sign of the health of the competitive community that I can't really compete in the majors. Um, let's see. Um, RoboGoblin Twitch asks, "What's your favorite drink?" E. I think I answered this on in the Ask the Devs chat, but probably my favorite drink is Indian Wells Special Reserve Root Beer. Um, this is totally off topic of Iron Lights, so I won't spend too long on it, but I will point out or share the fact that I have a spreadsheet of root beers that I've tried, each of which I've given a rating from 1 to 10 and comments about what the flavor was like. And so I'm trying to sort of try every root beer in the world and track which ones are the best. And so far, only one of them has gotten a 10, and it's a root beer that comes with a like a wax seal on the bottle, and costs like $7 per bottle. It's a little ridiculous, but it's amazing if you can ever try it. Indian Wells Special Reserve. I don't think there's many out there. I had to go to a special store. Anyway, um, Asiento asks, "Iron Lights Lego set." I don't know how that would work. I actually, funny enough, I have a friend who works at Lego, who's like one of the guys who actually designs their official sets and will build like the big stuff that they show off at Legoland and stuff. So he had to move to Denmark for that job. It's pretty kick-ass. Um, but nevertheless, I don't think that there's much market for an Ironlights Lego set. Sorry. All right, the match that I was talking about a moment ago, X9 versus Aaron. This is the upper bracket semifinals and is starting now. Um, both players using gold trim, but it looks like Aaron is going to be starting off on the knight and X9 with the scythe. So greatsword and reaper. Um, Aaron puts the sword out and just lets it hang there for a moment, um, showing some interesting moves in terms of how he can, you know, send that sword forward. But it's X9 who takes the opportunity for the first melee attack, gets around Aaron's defenses with the first few hits. Always a tough defense for the knight here. The Reaper's scythe can move very quickly, and despite the length of that greatsword, it's not so easy to actually be able to get in place to block that blade when it needs to be there. So Aaron takes quite a bit of damage. Um, Goes in for an attack, doesn't get many hits, but then charges up and backs up before his attack is done, charges up and goes in again. It looks like what the plan here is deliberately to break through the shield bars on X9's scythe. And indeed, once he's able to do that, he's getting several hits in and now charges up all the way, knowing that the scythe shield bars are broken. X9 unable to block more than one of these blows at a time, so Aaron just needs to try to get as many hits in as possible. And even therefore, when X9 is able to block some of it, he has to take those other hits. So X9 ended up with getting brought down to almost half health. However, at the end of that, X9 had a little bit of energy left, and Aaron had a ton of vulnerability. So X9 was able to go in and start getting hits for 1,000 damage or more. Aaron then trying to do the same, charge up, get a little bit of extra energy ready to go on the offensive. Basically trying to be as aggressive as possible because he knows that the shield bars are going to be coming back. X9 though not taking quite enough damage, and Aaron leaving himself with very little health left, and so X9 chooses to charge up and try to finish it off, goes in and is able to sweep under that sword, cleave through Aaron, and take the first round. What a fight. That was actually a lot closer than it may have looked at different points, because Aaron was pursuing a really interesting, deliberate strategy to break down the shield and then keep up enough momentum, probably doing enough damage to heal the vulnerability that he's incurring, to just stop X9 from being able to defend effectively. Interestingly, it looks like they've chosen to switch classes. After whatever bans came out, we now have X9 on the knight, and Aaron wielding the scythe. So let's see what happens with the shoe on the other foot. X9 goes in for the first attack. Able to land a few hits. It doesn't look like X9 is deliberately trying to hit the shield bars in this case. He is trying to sort of sneak around them and do, direct damage. Able to do a little bit, not a ton. So now the big question is whether Aaron can do more on his attack. He chooses to go in, get a little damage, then back off, charge up, and continue the attack again. I think the idea there is to get just like a little bit of sort of free energy, because he's confident that with enough, with that full bar of energy, he'll do enough damage to heal it up. He does successfully heal the vulnerability he took, and now Aaron doing even more damage, bringing X9 down to around a little over 60% health, and with Aaron sitting at around closer to 80%, has to be feeling good about that, taking a significant lead now right at the start. Looks like X9 took a bit of damage there, and now they're gesturing to each other. I don't know what exactly the gesture is. Aaron is, I don't know if that's like sort of blowing a kiss or something like that, but goes in for the attack, backs up, and then X9 chooses to attack, even though Aaron is left with quite a lot of energy left over. X9 using that big greatsword, trying to to get the big damage hits, but a lot of them are getting blocked on the way, leaving Aaron with a full bar of energy and still with more health. Um, Aaron has to be feeling in a pretty confident position right now. Um, Continuing to do the strategy of doing a little damage and then backing up and charging up for a little more. I'm wondering if this is sort of calibrated based on his confidence and how much damage he can do and how much energy, how much vulnerability he can heal. But in this case, it doesn't really matter. Aaron able to sneak that scythe past X9's defenses enough times to do huge amounts of damage, cleave through that health bar, and finish the round, bringing us to 1-1. Both players now will have had a chance to ban one class and will be moving on to finish the semifinals in a third round. So fantastic game. A really interesting match so far. I love seeing matches go to round 3 because we're sort of getting this implicit back and forth. X9 sticking with the knight in this case, and Aaron, interestingly, switching to, it looks like, the knight himself. So yeah, both players showed the power of the Reaper here, and then chose to switch to Knight. And I'm guessing that both players banned Reaper, so we end up with an interesting Knight mirror match. It's going to be just, nothing involving beating down the other player's shield or anything like that. A pure matter of sword play. X9 spending his whole bar of energy on this first attack, able to do some damage, not a ton. Aaron's going to look to do more and set the pace of this match in his own favor. But we're seeing Aaron do what he did in the previous match, backing off before the attack is finished, charging up, and then trying to continue for basically extending this attack even further. It might be that maybe, we're just speculating, but the point of that strategy is charging up when he knows that the opponent has no energy to retaliate. So it's the only time that it's really safe to do this charge up. X9, though, showing a lot of skill purely in the sword play level, and able to block us a lot of that, left with a little bit less health. Therefore, it is still, Aaron's advantage. But yeah, showing a lot of defensive skill in both players, in fact. Aaron now defending well on his own. It's going to be an interesting question to see who's able to sort of break out of this and pull ahead. Aaron almost with a perfect defense, not quite, lets one hit through, but again doing what we were seeing before, backing off, going in for another charge. I think the only concern there, or the downside, maybe why we haven't seen that strategy much from other players, is that every time you start the charge, you're losing a little chunk of energy. So I usually comment about how it's more efficient to do these longer attacks and fewer. Aaron is succeeding, though, showing a different way of approaching it, and I wonder if this is just sort of moving the meta, showing that I've been wrong all this time, and that those mechanics are not the be all end all. Okay, so yeah, I'm seeing that sort of strategy of using the letting go and grabbing the weapon to do a ranged attack that's shooting almost all of those shots from the same point, sort of this big, powerful blast. But it does look like the other player is not having any trouble. I don't know if any of those ranged attacks have hit so far. X9, with this big melee attack, not able to land many hits. Now Aaron able to land a couple right at the start of his own, and again, backing up, charging, continuing the attack, his sort of trademark style at this point, and able to land a few more, meaning that every time that we have this back and forth, X9, despite showing a lot of defensive skill, slipping a little further behind with each back and forth. X9 now definitely at a major disadvantage, has to figure out some way to sort of turn it around. Chooses to charge up with all of his remaining health, gain a little bit of extra energy, and then go in on the attack. Lands a couple of hits. Not enough to turn the tide, though. And now Aaron charging up, going for a short attack of his own to take advantage of X9's vulnerability. I think X9 sees the writing on the wall, is giving a little hello slash to the camera, and is bowing and accepting his defeat here. And there it is. The final blow struck. Aaron, with a convincing win on that mirror match, is able to move on to the finals. X9, though, might be thinking about a rematch because they, of course, are getting pushed down only to the lower bracket and has a chance to fight all the way back up. Um, X9, because this was a semifinals round, gets knocked down to the lower bracket round six, the very final lower bracket round, which means that it's basically another semifinals. Um, yeah, X9 going to have a chance either to finish in third place or fight all the way back up to the finals. All right, hopping into another match in progress between Axel and level 5 Goon. Um, Looks like we're seeing the Katars, and unfortunately, both players are using sort of silver and white settings, but it's a Katars versus Knight Greatsword match here. This is an interesting one because the Katars do have the ability to block both blades of that greatsword, but you have to keep them together. It's a little harder than just blocking with a single weapon of your own. Um, on the flip side though, when the ninja is on the attack, the greatsword can only be in one place, and that means that it's very difficult to be able to block um, both of those spots at the same time. I'm having a lot of trouble figuring out which player is which. This reminds me of one of the matches where my wife came to spectate and asked why the game was in black and white. I promise it's not, but this is just we're seeing alabaster armor and white trim